The great lecture hall of the Galactic Academy floated above a quiet star system. Its shining metal surface reflected the light of 3 suns. Inside, hundreds of alien students filled their seats. They came from many different planets, some with smooth blue skin, some with glowing eyes, others with strange symbols floating above their heads. The room hummed softly with alien technology, and the walls changed colors to match the mood of the crowd. It was the start of a special lecture. Everyone was excited because Professor Thalra, the most respected alien teacher in the academy, was about to speak. She walked to the center of the room, her long white robe flowing behind her. Her skin shone silver under the lights, and her voice echoed with calm confidence. "Welcome, students," she said. "Today we will speak of something very important, Deathworlds." A quiet wave went through the hall. The word Deathworld was always exciting. It meant danger. It meant power. Professor Thalra raised her hand, and a giant star map appeared in the air. Dozens of glowing dots represented planets. Many were green and blue, some were red, but only one shone a deep crimson. She pointed at it proudly. "This," she said, "is our home, Virelia, the only true death world in the galaxy. No other world is like ours. No other species has survived what we have survived." The alien students clapped their hands, clicked their claws, or made strange humming sounds, their way of cheering. Pride filled the room. But at the back of the hall, one figure stayed quiet. A girl sat alone. She wore the same academy uniform as the others, but something about her was different. Her dark hair was tied back simply. Her eyes were calm but sharp. She didn't cheer. She didn't clap. She just watched. Her name was Mara. She was a human exchange student, the only one in the entire academy. Most students avoided her. She was polite but distant. She spoke softly and rarely shared stories about her home planet. Many aliens thought her world was small and unimportant. Professor Thalra continued, walking slowly across the stage. "Our storms are deadly. Our wildlife is violent. Our gravity is higher than anywhere else. Every day is a fight to survive. That is why Virelians are the strongest and most evolved civilization in the galaxy. We are alone at the top. There are no others like us." Mara slowly leaned forward in her seat. Her fingers tapped the desk. She looked at the crimson dot floating in the air, the proud symbol of the teacher's world, and then at the empty black space where her own world should have been. But Earth was not on the map. It had been erased long ago. The professor's voice grew stronger. "For thousands of years, scholars have searched for another death world, but none exist. Others live on soft, safe planets. They could never understand what true survival means. Only we do. Only Virelia." Some students turned their heads toward Mara with smug expressions. A few whispered and laughed quietly, thinking she didn't hear. But she heard everything. Professor Thalra looked around proudly. "Are there any questions before we continue?" she asked. For a moment there was silence. Then a hand slowly rose. The professor stopped. Every eye in the hall turned. It was Mara, calm, steady. She looked directly at the professor. "Yes?" Thalra asked, surprised. "You have a question, human?" Mara's voice was soft but clear. "Yes, Professor. Have you ever heard of a planet called Earth?" The hall went silent. The sound of breathing and humming machines was all that remained. The professor blinked, confused. "Earth?" she repeated. "I do not know that name. Is it a colony?" Mara shook her head gently. "No," she said. "It's not a colony." A few students laughed out loud. One with green scales shouted, "Maybe it's a fairy tale." Another added, "Soft worlds love to make up stories." But Mara didn't react. Her face remained calm. Her hand lowered, but her gaze didn't break. The professor tilted her head. "Why do you ask?" Mara replied, "Because your history isn't complete." The laughter stopped. There was something in her voice, something cold and certain. The kind of tone that didn't belong to someone making jokes. Professor Thalra narrowed her glowing eyes. "Explain," Mara simply smiled. "Not yet, but you will understand soon." She leaned back in her chair. The silence in the room grew heavier. Students exchanged nervous glances. They didn't know why, but something about her words made them uncomfortable. The professor tried to regain control. She waved her hand, and the star map shifted to display survival data. She continued the lecture, but her mind kept returning to that strange question. Earth. In the back of the hall, Mara watched quietly. She knew what was coming. She knew the day would arrive when this academy and the entire galaxy would remember the name Earth. And when that day came, things would change forever. The next morning, the Galactic Academy buzzed with whispers. Mara's single question had spread through every hallway, cafeteria, and study pod like wildfire. "Did you hear what the humans said? She made up some fake world. Maybe she's challenging the professor." Groups of alien students gathered in circles, repeating the story again and again, twisting it to sound dramatic. Mara walked through the corridors silently, keeping her head straight. She could feel their eyes on her. Some stared with curiosity, others with hostility. A few simply stepped aside, as if she carried something dangerous with her. She didn't bother responding. She had been watched her whole life. This was nothing new. In the professor's private office, Thalra sat before a glowing display, her silver fingers tapping the surface. "Earth," she muttered to herself. The word felt strange in her mouth. She searched the Academy's vast database. Thousands of stars, millions of worlds, but no match. Not a single official record. She expanded the search to the Galactic Council archives. Still nothing, she frowned. That shouldn't have been possible. Even the smallest rocks floating in empty space were logged. For an entire planet to be missing was no accident. There was a knock at the door. "Enter," she said. A small insect-like alien student named Crix shuffled in nervously. His wings buzzed quietly as he spoke. "Professor, may I speak freely?" "You may." "It's about the human," Crix said. "I followed her last night." "I know I shouldn't have, but I was curious." Thalra raised an eyebrow. "Continue!" Crix's wings trembled. She was in the observation room. Late at night. She turned off the Academy's systems and activated a personal device. It showed images. Old recordings maybe, storms, creatures I've never seen. Environments so violent that even Varelians would die quickly. He paused, eyes wide. And I saw humans, surviving, fighting, thriving in it. The professor leaned forward slowly. "Are you certain of what you saw?" "Yes, Professor," Crix whispered. "I have never seen anything like it." Thalra dismissed him with a wave. He hurried out, wings buzzing faster now. She sat back in her chair, staring at the word Earth glowing faintly on her console. Something inside her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, began to grow. It was curiosity, mixed with something sharper, unease. Later that day, the class gathered again. The atmosphere was different. No one laughed or chatted loudly. Eyes shifted between Thalra and Mara, waiting for something to happen. The professor began her lecture, but halfway through, she stopped. "Yesterday a question was asked," she said. "A name was spoken that I do not recognize, Earth." Mara sat still. "I searched the archives," Thalra continued. "No such planet exists in official records. So I ask you, human, where did you hear this name?" Mara slowly stood. "I didn't hear it," she said calmly. "I was born there." A gasp rippled through the room. Some students laughed nervously. Others stared, unsure if she was serious. Thalra narrowed her eyes. "Prove it." Mara reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small, circular device. She placed it on the desk and tapped it. A faint blue hologram appeared above it, showing swirling storms over a green and blue world. "This," she said softly, "is Earth." The room filled with sharp whispers. The projection zoomed in. Thick forests, vast deserts, deep oceans filled with predators, frozen lands where snowstorms raged endlessly. The gravity markers and atmospheric numbers flashed on the screen. They were higher, harsher, deadlier than Virelia's. Thalra stepped closer, studying the data. It wasn't fake. The readings were too complex, too raw. Mara's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Your world is hard, but mine is alive in a way that breaks weaker species. Our planet didn't give us peace. It gave us storms, hunger, predators, disasters, and time. We adapted." One alien student, tall and covered in pale scales, stood up. "If that world is real, why has no one heard of it? Why is it not on the map?" Mara looked at him steadily. Because someone made sure it disappeared. The room fell silent. Thalra spoke slowly. That's a dangerous claim. It's not a claim, Mara replied. It's history. The professor dismissed the class early. She didn't want to, but her mind was spinning. As the students filed out, Mara lingered. You're going to look for it, she said quietly to the professor. Thalra didn't deny it. If your world is real, I need to know why it was erased. Mara gave a faint smile. Be careful, Professor. Curiosity can be dangerous. That night, Thalra stayed alone in the archives deep beneath the Academy. The walls were lined with glowing memory crystals from 1,000 worlds. She inserted her access codes and began digging into restricted files. After hours, she found something, a file hidden behind multiple layers of encryption. She bypassed the locks carefully. When the file finally opened, her breath caught. Earth, level Omega, access restricted. She scanned through the old records. They were fragmented and corrupted, but she saw enough. Brief reports from explorers, images of violent storms, humans surviving in impossible conditions, notes that described the species as unpredictable and dangerously adaptive. And then the final line burned into the file. Contact forbidden. Archive locked. Do not speak the name. She leaned back, staring at the screen. Someone had erased Earth deliberately. Someone powerful. Above her, the Academy slept. But in the quiet of that archive, the professor whispered the forbidden name to herself. Earth. She didn't know it yet, but that single word had started a chain reaction, and soon the galaxy would remember. Deep inside the archives, Professor Thalra stared at the glowing console. The word Earth floated in front of her like a ghost from another time. The deeper she read, the stranger it became. The reports were old, older than most civilizations she knew. The explorers who found Earth had written about forests so thick that they swallowed entire research drones. They described predators that hunted in coordinated packs. They recorded natural disasters that struck without warning. One log mentioned a single storm that destroyed 4 ships in seconds. And still, humans lived there, thrived there. She leaned closer, reading a line again and again. Species unpredictable, intelligence adaptable, recommend containment, erase coordinates. It wasn't just forgotten, it was buried on purpose. The door behind her slid open softly. She turned, startled. It was Mara. She stood there, hands behind her back, calm as always. You found it, she said quietly. Thalra rose slowly. You knew these records were here. Mara stepped inside. Of course. Every human who leaves Earth knows the truth. We're taught what happened to our world in secret, away from your council's ears. The professor folded her arms. Then explain it to me. Why would the council erase a planet? Why erase you? Mara didn't answer right away. She walked to the console and placed her palm on the glowing surface. The data responded to her touch, unlocking more layers that even Thalra's codes couldn't reach. It was as if the system recognized her. What are you doing? Thalra asked sharply. Showing you what they don't want you to see, Mara replied. The screen flickered, and a grainy recording appeared. It showed an alien meeting hall. Dozens of council members sat in high-backed chairs. A hologram of Earth floated in the center. A voice spoke, deep and cold. Their planet is not like ours. It breeds survivors, not subjects. If left unchecked, they will spread. They will not bend. Erase the location. Ban contact. Seal the records. Another voice responded, hesitant. But what if they are dangerous. The galaxy is not ready for another death world. The recording ended abruptly. Thalra's silver skin dimmed as she stared at the screen. So the council feared you. They feared what we represent, Mara said. A world that doesn't follow their rules, a species that doesn't rely on protection. They built this peaceful galactic order after centuries of war. Then they found us and saw something that reminded them of what they used to be. The professor paced slowly, her robes trailing behind her. "You're saying they erased an entire world to protect their comfort?" Mara looked at her. "Yes, and to keep us isolated. They thought if no one remembered Earth, no one would look for it. But now," she tapped the console, "you've seen it." The lights in the archive flickered. A warning appeared on the console. "Unauthorized access detected. Security en route." Thalra's eyes widened. "They know we're here." Mara didn't panic. "Good. Let them come." Minutes later, 2 Academy security officers entered. Their armor gleamed, and their voices were strict. "Professor Thalra, human student, step away from the terminal." Thalra hesitated. She was a respected teacher, not a criminal. "We were doing research," she said firmly. "Accessing restricted files is a violation," one officer replied. "You will both come with us for questioning." Mara stepped forward. "Do you know why those files are restricted?" The officer ignored her. "Hands behind your back." Mara sighed. She raised her hands slowly, but her eyes never left theirs. "You're scared of something you don't understand." The officers escorted them out and brought them to a sterile white room deep inside the academy. A single glowing table separated them from 3 senior administrators. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp. One of them leaned forward. "Professor, you've served this academy for over 50 years. Why access forbidden data?" Thalra replied carefully, "Because a student mentioned something I didn't recognize. I followed a question. Isn't that what learning is about?" The administrator's lips tightened. "Some questions are better left unanswered." Mara spoke next. "That's exactly what they said when they erased Earth." The room grew colder. The 3 administrators exchanged quick, silent looks. One finally asked, "Who told you about Earth?" Mara smiled faintly. "No one. I lived there." The administrators froze. For a brief moment, their calm masks cracked. Then the oldest one spoke. "You will keep this information to yourself. For your safety." Mara tilted her head. "Or for yours." The questioning ended quickly after that. Thalra was released with a warning. Mara was placed under temporary observation, which meant guards followed her everywhere now. That night, the professor returned to her quarters exhausted. She stared out at the stars. She had always believed the Council's version of history, that Virelia was the only death world, that the galaxy was mapped and known, but now she understood there were holes, gaps big enough to hide an entire planet. She replayed Mara's words in her mind. "They feared what we represent." Down in her dorm, Mara sat on her bed with a small black device in her hand. She pressed it, and a faint hologram appeared. Earth spinning slowly in the dark. She whispered to it like an old friend. "They're starting to see you." Her personal console beeped. A message appeared. No sender, just a line of text. "They're watching. Be ready." Mara's calm face hardened slightly. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. And now someone powerful knew that the secret was out. She knew this was only the beginning. The following day began under a heavy, strange silence. Word had spread quickly after Mara's and Thalra's questioning. Students who had once looked at Mara with mild curiosity now watched her with something sharper, suspicion, maybe even fear. Hallways that were usually loud and full of chatter felt different. Conversations stopped when she walked by. In the main plaza of the Academy, a giant holoscreen floated above the crowd. It showed the Galactic Council emblem spinning slowly. An official message echoed through the speakers. "Unauthorized access to restricted archives has been detected. All students and faculty are reminded that historical records beyond approved databases are classified. Violations will be punished severely." Thalra stood at the edge of the crowd, her silver skin catching the morning light. She had never heard such a message before. The council rarely addressed academies directly. It was a warning to everyone, and especially to her. She noticed Mara walking through the plaza, 2 guards behind her, their black armor shining. She looked like a prisoner, but her face was calm, almost too calm. Her eyes swept the crowd and met Thalra's. There was no fear there, only quiet determination. Later in the classroom, Thalra began the lecture with her usual voice, but the atmosphere was tense. The students' attention wasn't on the lesson, it was on Mara. Every time she moved, whispers followed. Halfway through the session, a scaled alien student named Reth stood abruptly. "Professor," he said loudly, "why is the human still here?" Thalra paused. "Because she is a student just like you." Reth's tail slammed the floor. "She broke the rules. She accessed forbidden data. If any of us did that, we'd be expelled or worse." Another student joined in. "She's dangerous. You saw the message. The council doesn't want this." Thalra's voice sharpened. "Enough. This classroom is for learning, not accusations." Mara didn't speak. She sat quietly, eyes forward, letting their words bounce off her like stones against a wall. But inside she was measuring every reaction. She wasn't surprised. She had expected resistance. After class ended, Thalra called Mara to stay. The room emptied until it was just the 2 of them. "You should have warned me," Thalra said softly. Mara tilted her head. "Would it have changed anything?" "Yes," the professor answered. "I would have been ready." Mara stepped closer. "Professor, you're part of this now, whether you wanted to be or not." Thalra sighed. "The council is watching. I have never disobeyed them before. I don't even know what line I've crossed." Mara's eyes softened for a moment. "You crossed it the moment you saw the truth." Before Thalra could reply, a faint sound came from outside, a rising mechanical hum, followed by heavy footsteps. The door slid open and 3 council enforcers entered. They were not Academy guards. Their armor was darker, their movements sharper, their faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. "Professor Thalra, human Mara, you are required for immediate transfer to Central Station for questioning," one of them said in a flat, emotionless voice. Thalra's stomach tightened. The council didn't send enforcers for minor issues. "I will come," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. They were escorted through the Academy's corridors as curious students pressed against walls to watch. Mara walked between the enforcers, as if she had done this before. Her calmness unsettled Thalra more than the soldiers did. They boarded a small transport ship that carried them up through the atmosphere to a massive orbital station. It was shaped like a ring, glowing faintly against the stars. Thalra had seen it before in official hollows, but never with her own eyes. It was where the council kept its oldest records and made its most important decisions. Inside, they were led through cold, bright corridors to a circular chamber. In the center stood a raised platform surrounded by high walls. Council members floated in their gravity pods around the room, looking down at them like silent judges. The oldest councillor spoke first. His voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Professor Thalra, human Mara, you have accessed forbidden knowledge. Do you understand the seriousness of this act?" Thalra bowed slightly. "I was searching for understanding." "I meant no harm." The councillor's eyes turned to Mara. "And you, human, why reveal what was meant to stay buried?" Mara didn't bow. She looked up at them, steady and unafraid. "Because lies rot in silence. You erased Earth, but you didn't erase us." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some councillors shifted uncomfortably. The oldest councillor leaned forward. "Earth was erased for a reason. Your kind is unpredictable, dangerous. You come from a world that should not exist. It breeds chaos." Mara's voice stayed calm, but each word landed like a strike. "It breeds survivors. You built peace by hiding the things that scared you. We are not your enemy. But if you keep pretending we don't exist one day, you'll face something worse than fear. You'll face us unprepared." The room fell into heavy silence. Another councillor, with dark green skin and glowing eyes, spoke. You speak boldly for someone whose planet was erased. Do you think the galaxy would welcome your return? Mara's gaze didn't waver. They don't need to welcome us. They only need to remember. Thalra watched the exchange with growing unease. She had always believed the Council to be wise and calm, but their eyes now looked more like predators cornered in their own nest. Finally, the oldest counselor spoke again. This matter will not spread. You are both forbidden to speak of Earth outside this chamber. Disobedience will bring consequences. They were escorted back to the ship in silence. On the way, Thalura whispered, "Why didn't they deny it?" Mara replied quietly, "Because deep down they know the truth always finds a way out." Back at the academy that night, Thalura sat alone in her room. For the first time in her long life, she felt unsure of the world she thought she understood. The Council had power, but it also had fear. Mara had shown no fear at all. Mara, on the other hand, looked up at the stars through her dorm window. She could feel it, a shift. The Council's reaction meant something had cracked. Secrets once buried were stirring, and once Earth's name echoed again in these halls. It wouldn't stop, she whispered to the stars. They can't silence what's already awake. Night fell over the academy like a heavy blanket, but sleep did not come easily to anyone. Rumors spread faster than light. Some students claimed Mara had threatened the Council. Others said she was part of a hidden human army preparing to return. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. The name Earth had been spoken in the Council chamber, and even whispers of that name carried weight. In her dorm room, Mara sat on the floor, cross-legged, the small holographic projector glowing faintly before her. Earth spun slowly in the air, surrounded by stars. Her fingers hovered above it like someone tracing the outline of an old scar. She didn't smile. Her face was quiet, thoughtful. She had known this day would come. She had raised her hand in class not to show off, but because the silence had lasted long enough. A soft knock came at her door. She didn't move at first. Then she said, "Come in." The door slid open. Professor Thalra stepped inside, wearing a simple dark robe. She looked different now, not like the proud teacher from that first lecture, but like someone carrying a weight she didn't fully understand yet. "They've placed watchers near every hallway," Thalra said. "Even my access to the archives has been limited. They're sealing everything tighter." Mara shut off the projector. "Of course they are. They're scared." Thalra sat across from her on the floor. "Mara, you need to understand. The Council doesn't act this quickly for nothing. I've served under them my entire life. They've faced invasions, plagues, political uprisings. They always respond with calm measures. But this is fear," Mara nodded slowly. "That's why they erased us. Not because they didn't understand Earth, but because they did. They saw what humans were capable of. We grew on a world that wanted to kill us every day. It didn't make us monsters. It made us impossible to control." Thalra hesitated. "If that's true, then why reveal it now? Why not stay silent and keep your people safe?" Mara's eyes sharpened. "Because silence only protects the ones in power, not the truth." Before Thalra could respond, a low rumbling shook the walls. Alarms lit up across the dormitory halls. The professor jumped to her feet. "What is that?" Mara was already at the window. Outside, streaks of light crossed the night sky. Incoming ships. Not Academy vessels. Their hulls were dark, marked with the Council's special insignia. Enforcé frigates. Dozens of them. "They're here to take control," Mara said. Her voice was steady, but her hands curled into fists. The Academy's intercom came to life. "Attention students and staff. This is a Council operation. Remain in your rooms. Do not interfere." Thalra's mind raced. Why would they send this many ships? It's just one student and one professor. She stopped mid-sentence. She realized what it meant. They're not just here for us. They're here for everyone. Moments later, the main plaza was filled with the sound of boots hitting the ground. Enforcers spread through the academy, sealing off exits, locking down halls, scanning devices. It wasn't a search. It was containment. Mara moved quickly. She pulled open a hidden panel under her desk and retrieved a small, matte black data cube. Thalra stared. "What is that?" "It's a key," Mara said simply. "A piece of Earth they could never erase." She tucked it into her uniform and opened the door. The hallway outside was crawling with enforcers, their visors glowing faint red. "If they get this, it's over," she whispered. Thalra grabbed her arm. "Do you even know what you're doing? You could bring the Council's entire wrath on us." Mara looked her straight in the eyes. "They started this the moment they erased us. I'm just finishing what they tried to bury." They slipped through the service corridors, moving carefully. Mara seemed to know the layout better than expected. At one point, Thalra asked, "How do you know these routes?" Mara gave a faint smile. "Humans plan for worst-case scenarios. Always." They reached a narrow maintenance tunnel that led to the east wing, far from the Enforcer's initial landing zone. But before they could move further, a voice echoed down the tunnel. "Stop!" Two Enforcers stepped out of the shadows, blocking their path. Their weapons glowed faintly. Thalra froze. Mara didn't. She stepped forward calmly. "You're wasting your time. The Council's fear won't stop what's already happening." One Enforcer raised his weapon. "Hand over the device." Mara tilted her head slightly. "If you shoot, you'll never find it." A tense silence filled the tunnel. Thalura's heart pounded in her chest. Mara's calmness was unsettling even now. Finally, one of the Enforcers lowered his weapon a fraction. "You're playing a dangerous game, human." Mara's voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "No, I'm ending one." Before they could react, she triggered a hidden control on her wristband. The tunnel lights flickered out, plunging them into darkness. Thalra felt Mara grab her hand and pull her forward. They ran through the pitch black, guided only by Mara's memory of the path. Shouts echoed behind them, followed by the sound of boots chasing. They emerged in an unused landing bay. Whole ship sat silent, covered in dust. Mara moved quickly to a small shuttle tucked in the corner. Its design was unlike any Academy vessel. Sharp, rugged, built for survival rather than elegance. Thalura stared. "Where did you get this?" "From someone who still remembers," Mara answered. She powered up the engines. The shuttle hummed, old but alive. Enforcers burst into the bay just as the shuttle lifted off. Blaster fire struck the walls around them. Thalra gripped the seat tightly as they shot upward through the night sky. "They'll follow us," she shouted. Mara didn't look back. "Let them. They've spent centuries trying to keep us hidden. Let's see how they handle the truth flying right at them." The shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere, engines flaring bright. Enforcer ships scrambled behind them, but Mara flew like someone born in chaos. Every sharp turn, every sudden dive felt deliberate, practiced. Thalura glanced at her. "Who are you, really?" Mara's gaze was fixed on the stars. "I'm a reminder," she said softly, and with that, the small shuttle vanished into the darkness of space, leaving the Academy and the Council's tightening grip behind. The stars stretched around them like a silent ocean as the small shuttle cut through the dark. Thalra sat rigid in her seat, her silver fingers gripping the armrests as Mara piloted with sharp, precise movements. Behind them, the Enforcer ships appeared as distant glimmers, hunting lights on the black horizon. They were faster, but Mara flew like someone who had spent her life dodging things that should have killed her. "Where are we going?" Thalra asked, her voice low but steady. "Somewhere they don't look anymore," Mara replied. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, rerouting power, bending flight patterns, slipping between dead comm channels like a shadow. Thalra glanced at the navigation screen. Most of the route was blank, uncharted zones beyond the Academy's protected star systems. "These regions are restricted," she whispered. Mara gave a faint smile. "Exactly. The Council abandoned them decades ago, which means they don't control everything out here." For a while, neither spoke. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Thalra stared at Mara. She still couldn't understand how this calm, quiet student had turned into someone the Council feared. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't loud or arrogant, but everything about her radiated quiet certainty, as if this moment had been waiting for years. Mara suddenly reached into her uniform and pulled out the small black data cube she'd taken from her room earlier. She placed it gently on the console between them. It emitted a soft, rhythmic pulse. Thalra leaned closer. "What is it, really?" Mara looked at the cube like someone looking at something precious. "It's a seed," she said softly. Every human who leaves Earth carries one. It holds our history, our real history. The storms, the wars, the triumphs, the mistakes. Everything they erased. And more than that, she tapped the cube lightly. It's a beacon. Thalra's eyes widened. You're calling someone. Mara nodded once. I raised my hand that day not to start a fight. I did it to signal home that the silence was ending. The Council thought they buried us. They never understood that Earth doesn't stay quiet forever. Before Thalra could respond, the shuttle's sensors lit up with warning lights. Several enforcer ships had locked onto their trail. They're closing in, Thalra said quickly. Mara didn't panic. She flipped switches, and the shuttle suddenly dropped into a narrow belt of rock and debris, a dense asteroid field orbiting a dying star. Hold on, she warned. The shuttle wove between jagged rocks with terrifying speed. Massive stone fragments spun slowly in the dark, some glowing faintly from the star's weak light. The enforcers followed, but their larger ships struggled to maneuver. Two collided with drifting boulders, exploding in silent bursts of light. Thalra stared at Mara. No one flies through here. Mara didn't look up from the controls. Humans do. After what felt like hours, they emerged on the other side. Only two enforcer ships remained, trailing them at a distance. The shuttle's fuel levels were dropping fast. They'll catch us eventually, Thalra said quietly. Mara's gaze hardened. They won't have to, she pointed ahead. Look. Through the viewing screen, a strange structure came into sight, a cluster of old satellites and broken stations drifting together in orbit around a dead moon. At first it looked like junk. Then as they drew closer, faint lights flickered between the wrecks, forming a hidden pattern. Thalra's breath caught. That's not Council design, Mara's voice lowered. It's ours. She sent a coded signal from the cube. The flickering lights answered, rearranging themselves into a glowing corridor. The shuttle slipped through. A cloaking field rippled around them, and suddenly the enforcer ships disappeared from the scanner. They flew past without even knowing what they'd missed. The shuttle landed softly on a platform deep inside the hidden station. The airlock hissed open, and Thalra followed Mara out. What she saw made her stop in place. The station was alive. Humans, real humans, moved through its corridors. Some wore military uniforms, others wore simple work clothes, but all carried the same sharp, aware presence Mara had. They looked at Thalra with curiosity but no fear. A tall woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair approached them. Her eyes locked onto Mara. You made a lot of noise, she said. Mara gave a small nod. They were already listening. I just made sure they heard. The woman looked at Thalra next. And who's this? A professor, Mara said. She asked the right question. Thalra tried to keep her composure. You built all of this? In secret, the woman nodded. The Council erased us, but they didn't destroy us. We stayed silent because it was easier for the galaxy to pretend we were gone. But silence doesn't last forever. Mara handed the cube to the woman. The Academy knows the name again. The Council's moving faster than expected. We need to be ready. The woman turned to the gathered humans. You heard her? The time we prepared for is here. Thalra stepped closer. You're not planning to attack the Council, are you? The woman's gaze was steady. Attack? No, but when the galaxy finally remembers Earth, we intend to speak for ourselves. Mara turned to Thalra. This is why I showed you the truth. You've lived under their version of history all your life. You've seen how they react when something threatens it. Now you need to decide if you'll keep standing behind their walls, or see the galaxy the way it really is. Thalra felt something shifting inside her. All her years of teaching, all her loyalty to the Council, felt suddenly thin against the weight of what she'd seen in just a few days. She looked at the humans around her, people from a world she had never been allowed to know existed, and she didn't see monsters. She saw survivors. The woman placed the cube into a slot on a large console. The station lights brightened. A pulse of energy rippled outward into space, faint but steady. Thalra turned toward Mara. What did you just do? Mara exhaled slowly. We woke up the galaxy. Far beyond the station, in deep space, old listening posts blinked awake for the first time in centuries. Ancient Earth frequencies traveled through the void, reaching forgotten corners of the stars. Whispers began to stir in systems that had long obeyed the Council without question. Somewhere, on a distant world, someone looked up and heard a name they hadn't heard in generations. Earth.